Hello everyone, this is Argaru, and I've decided to go ahead and do, mostly for fun, just a documentary video of my Magic the Gathering Ninjitsu deck. Basically, I really like the idea of the deck because you can get a lot of powerful effects as long as you're able to get a creature attacking and unblocked. Basically, you can see it's a blue-black deck, and I keep it at the 60 card minimum. It's a very creature heavy deck, but I feel pretty happy with it. I've tested it a little bit and it seems to work pretty well. Be surprised at how fast it can actually go, especially seeing as how I avoid using a lot of the higher cost ninjas for the most part. Okay, so for land I went with 10 copies each of Swamp and Island. I apologize for the camera angles because I'm using a clip-on camera that hooks up to the top of my monitor and it has a very short cord, and my keyboard is the only place I can really stretch it to show you all the cards. I also apologize in case my aim goes off and you can't see what I'm looking at because I'm too busy looking at the actual card and at the screen to make sure the camera's aimed right. So sorry about that. And also 4 copies of Jamur Aqueduct. Yeah, you have to return a swamp or an island or any other type of basic land to your hand when you bring it out, and it comes into play tapped, but it gives you 1 blue and 1 black every time you tap it, so it's kind of worth it. The only other... oh, that's 24 lands altogether, and 4 enchantments. Basically, I went with 4 copies of Writ of Passage for one simple reason. First off, it's a couple reasons actually. For 1 blue, you can enchant a creature, and whenever enchanted creature attacks, if its power is 2 or less, it's unblockable this turn. And basically that covers most of the creatures. As a matter of fact, this one, and this one are the only 3 creatures that it can't work with because their power are all 3 in their case, and 5 in her case. Yeah, that is girl. But I really like the forecast ability of the card. Simply pay 1 blue and 1 of any color, reveal this card from your hand, and target creature with power 2 or less is unblockable this turn. So basically you can use this over and over and over again, which is pretty handy when I want to use it with one of my weaker ninjas, which is the whole reason of having it in the deck. I went with cheap creatures that either were unblockable or hard to block. The hard to block one is a creature with Shadow. Drifter Ildal. 4 copies of him. For 1 blue, you get a 2/1 human wizard creature with Shadow, meaning he can only block or be blocked by other creatures with Shadow. And he does have one slight downside of at the beginning of your upkeep, you have to sacrifice him unless you pay 1 blue. So, unfortunately, I'm not really finding other ones that really fit well for a nice cheap cost. I'd like to keep him to 1 cost or 2 cost creatures, but I looked around and I haven't really found other ones that are quite as good, and he's the cheapest cost creature with Shadow that I've been able to find. 4 copies of him in the deck. 4 copies of Tormented Soul. For 1 black, you get a black spirit that's 1/1 creature. He cannot block and is unblockable, so he's really key to this deck. And I also have 4 copies of Dimir Infiltrator. For 1 blue, 1 black, you get a spirit that is 1 and 3. He's unblockable, and if you pay 1 blue, 1 black, and 1 of any color, you can send him to your graveyard and then search your library for another card that costs 3 mana and put it into your hand. As for all the ninjas, basically for anyone who's not familiar with ninjas, they all have the ninjitsu ability, which is if you return an unblocked attacker to your hand and pay their ninjitsu cost, you can bring these guys directly into play by returning the other creature to your hand, pay the ninjitsu cost, and this ninja will come into play tapped and attacking, and the ninjas always gain some kind of ability whenever they successfully deal damage to the opponent. I went with only 2 copies of Skull Snatcher because unless you're going up against a deck that uses a lot of flashback cards and graveyard revival, you're not really going to have to deal with this kind of thing too often. Rat Ninja for 1 black and 1 of any color, or 2/1. A ninjitsu cost of only 1 black, which is very good. And whenever he deals combat damage to a player, remove up to 2 target cards in that player's graveyard from the game. So very handy against decks that rely a lot on having cards in the graveyard. 3 copies of Mistblade Shinobi. A 1/1 human ninja for 2 colorless and 1 blue. A ninjitsu cost of only 1 blue, which is a real bargain. And whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you can return target creature that player controls to its owner's hand. This guy's really handy because he is basically creature with the unsummon card ability that you can use over and over again. Next, I went with a full 4 copies of Ninja of the Deep Hours, simply because he has a very useful effect. He's a human ninja, 2/2 for 3 colorless and 1 blue, an ninjutsu cost of only 1 colorless and 1 blue, and whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you can draw a card. So basically very powerful in this deck. 4 copies of Throat Slitter. If I can't bounce the creature, I'll just kill it flat out. Rat Ninja, 2/2 for 4 colorless and a black, and a ninjutsu cost of 2 colorless and a black, and whenever she deals combat damage to a player, destroy a target non-black creature that player controls. I wanted to have more copies of this guy in the deck, but he's a legendary creature, so I can only have 1 of them out at a time. Higure the Still Wind. I think that's how you pronounce it. A 3/4 legendary creature human ninja for 3 colorless and 2 blue, or a ninjutsu cost of 2 colorless and 2 blue. Basically, whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you can search your library for a ninja card, reveal it, and put it into your hand. Then shuffle your library, and if you pay 2, target ninja is unblockable this turn. So he's a very useful guy to get out. 3 copies, of Okiba Gang Shinobi. Rat Ninja, 3/2 for 3 colorless and 2 black, or a ninjutsu cost of 3 colorless and 1 black, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards 2 cards. Decide for 3 copies, half for power and half for the discard ability, which can be very handy. 2 copies of Ink Eyes, Servant of Oni. Again, only 2 copies because, again, it's a legendary creature. 5/4 legendary creature Rat Ninja for 4 colorless and 2 black, or a ninjutsu cost of 3 colorless and 2 black. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may put target creature card from that player's graveyard into play under your control. And also, you can pay 1 black and 1 colorless to regenerate Ink Eyes. That's pretty much the deck. Kind of wishing that Higure wasn't a legendary creature so I could use more of them. For those of you who don't know, a legendary creature means you can only have 1 copy of that creature in play. If another one comes into play, they both die, which sucks. As for the side deck, I went with 2 more copies of Skull Snatcher just in case I go up against a lot of graveyard-dependent decks. A 4th copy of Mistblade Shinobi for more bouncing. 4 copies of Veil of Secrecy and Arcane Instant, which is 1 colorless and 1 blue, and target creature is unblockable and can't be the target of spells or abilities this turn, and also has the splice onto Arcane, return a blue creature you control to its owner's hand. Basically, if I play another Arcane spell, I can splice this effect onto it, but it's the only arcane card I have in the deck, so I'm not too worried about that part. 4 copies of Negate, which is 1 blue and 1 colorless. Instant, which lets you counter target non-creature spell, so basically it counters anything that's not a creature. And 4 copies of Thoughtbind, which is 2 colorless and a blue. Instant that lets you counter a target spell with converted mana cost of 4 or less. So it's useful for getting rid of anything other than their really super high-costed nasty things. So I've tried to deck out. Works pretty well. Works pretty fast. If anybody has any ideas on ways I can improve it, definitely open to suggestions. Polite comments only, please. Sorry, I've just seen people do a lot of nasty things in their comment boxes. And thank you for watching. Take care.